بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين ثم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
So our topic today is important for sure. I think especially in this modern world and as youth, because as we go we're gonna see the link between our topic today and the reason why the Ummah right now is in the humiliation it is right now. You understand? But before we go on, let's introduce ourselves, beginning with Hamza. He is not a regular guest, although he has hands in every single episode that comes out in Cozy Cast. But his presence is always welcomed and is always pleasant. Go ahead, Hamza.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I'm Hamza. And today's obviously, as Mundir mentioned, is an important topic. I think the concept of youth and the concept of death and how it affects the youth or how it should actually affect the youth would be a more appropriate one. So yes, I'm ready to, let's begin and let's see where this conversation takes us.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Abdullah, and I have appeared in a few videos before. And today is definitely going to be a very exciting topic, but at the same time very serious. It's a very serious topic. Exciting in the sense we want to talk about it because it's something very important and every Muslim must know.
So when we begin, we usually begin by giving an introduction to either the topic or the concept of the topic we're talking about. And it's important because, a lot of things could be taken out of context. Like a lot of these podcasts, you see, a lot of the time it's taken out of context. You understand? And I think a lot of a major aspect of a lot of podcasts, a lot of speeches getting taken out of proportion, if that's the correct word.
What exactly do you mean taken out of context?
Like, for example, what we say is proper in the context of different topics, you understand? Maybe if we're talking about death, what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about the Shari'i process of death from the beginning to end? Or are we talking about the definition of death and what aspect of death are we talking about? We need to have that context in place. And it's important because many of the things or many of the topics we say in the podcast, if you look at it, it's deep.
Yes.
And under that specific topic is so many subtopics and so many different concepts and approaches and perspective you might take to understand the topic we're talking about. Before we talked about depression, you understand? And we talked about it more in a Shari'i way, you understand? The proper way, you understand? So we didn't look too much into the medical sense of depression and all of these things, you understand? Because that was our context. This is what we're talking about. This is Cozy Cast, you understand? But if we are talking about depression in a medical sense, you understand? We'll mention how it is in your brain and all of the chemicals and all of these things, which is a result of depression, for example. And this is just a result of it. So we're talking about what we see. So we might not really mention a lot of Shari'i things. So some people, if we didn't give them that context in the beginning, so we're talking about depression today, but we didn't give them the context of in which aspect are we looking at depression.
So you want to clarify the context of today's discussion.
Yes, exactly.
So people don't go.
So don't get, because for example, just to give you an example, if we're talking about depression and we're looking at it in a medical perspective, but which by necessity will not really mention too many Shari'i things around it, Absolutely. But if we didn't clarify that and we are pretending to be Cozy Cast and we are talking about depression and we didn't mention anything Shari'i, people are going to be like, what is happening with these people? Are they liberals or what are they? You understand? But if you clarified in the beginning, we're talking about depression and we're going to look at it in a more medical approach, looking at the effects of it in your brain and the hormones and all of these things. Obviously in the Quran or in the Hadith, there isn't any specific hormones that will be affected because of depression. These are things that Allah Azza wa Jalla allowed it for us to check it by ourselves through medicine, through whatever, you understand. But no doubt, it's a result of Allah's action. You understand?
Yes.
So my point is, it's good that we're gonna begin this concept of death topic. We give them a context of what do we mean by that, and how it should affect the youth. What do we mean? The context behind it, in which approach we're gonna take it, so that we don't cause any or open any doors for confusion or misconceptions. You understand? So now the questions for you guys, because I'm the host, is concept of death. It's a wide context, but I want to focus on the spiritual aspect of how it should affect you as a person. You understand? So death. When you hear death, what comes to your brain and what comes to your mind, and do you keep it always in the back of your head, or how do you approach death, and what is your perspective and concept of death?
Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, As-salatu was-salam ala khatim al-anbiya wal-mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. So when you hear the word death, as a Muslim, you must know that this is the time where your test has ended. This is the end of your test. Because we know, as a Muslim, we are here for a purpose. The purpose is to worship Allah alone and to get closer to Him and to affirm Tawheed.
Wait, I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off, but that
Okay.
was such a good point. It's not a joke.
Yeah, I mean,
You understand? Because the perspective of death differs from people. He said, wow, I actually love that, mashallah. I'm very impressed. Some people will look at death like, oh, this is the end of me being with my family. This is the end of me being around my money and property. That's why. But you're saying we should look at death as the end of our test.
yes.
You see, am I the only one catching the beautiful point here? Okay, go ahead.
So, this is what every Muslim must know. He must fear this moment where he knows, okay, it's too late. After death, you have no opportunity now. Your test is over. Your opportunity to come back and to do the good and to leave the bad is over. So, obviously, before this, we must understand that death is inevitable. You know, Allah says in the Quran, "Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut." And even the people of different religions, they cannot deny death. Everyone knows death is gonna come.
Even atheists who
Even
don't believe in
atheists.
God or whatever. Yeah.
Only some dumb person who doesn't have a brain will think I can live forever. Yani, these people are out. But usually the general population, everyone, no matter what religion they are, they know one day they're gonna die. So this is the first thing we need to know. It's inevitable. It's going to happen, whether you like it or not. Secondly, is the end of your test. Khalas, over. You have no second chance.
And subhanallah, that's a very great point. And this is what I meant by context, if you understood it now, Hamza, is when we are talking right now about death and how it should affect the youth, what context are we talking about? Are we talking about, because how you perceive death, the podcast will go differently.
Yes.
If we were talking about death and our concept of death is, oh, we're going to separate from our families, the whole content of the podcast will be how to be close with your family, how to, you understand, how to be in a good relationship with them so that when you die, you don't affect them. You understand? So this is the importance of context.
Yes.
Is our context is, this is your end of your test. So how it should affect you as a youth is not that you are close with your family or so that you can get as much money as you
Obviously,
can.
just to clarify here, you don't actually mean, you mean because being closer to family is Silatul Rahim is also part of Islam, but you don't mean that. You mean
No, I mean like you
people who
make your whole
concentrate,
life
yeah.
into just getting close to your family and making as much family as I
Yes,
can
absolutely.
and being close with them. Or if we're talking about money, because if we said the concept of death is, if I ask you, for example, what do you say about the concept of death? You'll tell me, well, death is where you are separated from your property. This is the end of you and your money, which is a lot of the West, a lot of these people, how they think. You understand? So if you knew that, how would your approach to life be? Totally different. Your whole approach would be get as much money as I can before I die. You understand? And this is what we see people doing right now.
Yes.
They say you live once, do as much. So their life is, their concept of death is what the end of my pleasures.
Yes.
So take as much pleasure as I can.
You understand? So you understand the importance of context. You understand? So when Abdullah now says that as a Muslim, our perspective of death, our concept of death should be, when we die, it's the end of our
Test.
test. what do you think Hamza would be the approach of the Muslim and how he would live his life if that was his approach?
It would obviously, if his end goal was to die with, if your end goal, as in an exam, if your end goal is to get 100% of the marks, you would have an obvious preparation. You would not leave it something to the last minute, you know. So, and it suits our topic when you say, because some people might get confused when you said how should death affect the youth, because youth is obviously far from death. In most cases, people die at an old age. So most people who get the full marks on an exam don't get it when they're on the last day of preparation. 2 days before the exam, they start preparing, and then, oof, you know, you pass with colorful marks. But that doesn't happen. So obviously, you start earlier in your semester when you start preparing for your exam. That's going to come days later. Similar thing would be for a Muslim to prepare for death. You know, as a young person, as we are of this age, this should be, as I say, it is not necessarily how we or any of us live our life, but idealistically, I think it should be that.
And if you look at the analogy you did about the test, the thing is with the test, you know when is your final exam.
Exactly.
You know when is your final exam. So
That's to clarify. I mentioned, you know, in most cases, people die late.
No. What I'm saying is, like, as youth, even if generally speaking, older people, but that shouldn't be your.
That shouldn't be, yes,
because the thing is, no one knows when
No
he
one
is.
knows, absolutely.
As for the exam, people know when is their exam,
When
so
is
they
their
can prepare after a week. I'm gonna like blow it off, full studying, forget everything, or a month before.
Absolutely.
You have that preparation, you have that luxury preparing. You understand? But for a test, for the life, the dunya, this test, no matter how old you are, you have zero idea when you're about to die. You understand? And I always tell this to Abu Thalj. Sometimes when we see videos of people dying and whatnot, you see them wearing normal clothes. What does this tell you?
Means they were not prepared.
They were not prepared. When they went out of their house, they went just like we do. We get prepared, they prepare. They brush their teeth, we brushed our teeth. You know, we showered, they showered. They did the same thing. They choose which clothes I'm gonna wear today. They chose this, they chose that, you know, and they were expecting to go home.
Yes.
They were expecting, okay, you know, some people die craving something for lunch that they were waiting for, or dinner, just like we are. You understand? No idea how we died. And just before you say your point, I saw a video really of someone walking. You know, all of a sudden a tree. It's almost like it was waiting for them. Wallahi, as soon as they reached where it's supposed to go, it started falling and fell on them. Died. They were going back, I think, home from their work. You understand? Yeah.
Now, coming back to the same analogy, the only difference, as you mentioned, between the test which you're writing in the school and the test of this life is when you're writing the test, you know when the test is going to end. For example, if your rules in the school tell you your exam is 2 hours. So when you're writing the exam, you know, okay, I only have 2 hours. So you are ready to do the exam in your best. But in the case of this, you don't know when the test is going to end. And Allah says in the Quran, وَمَا تَدْرِي نَفْسٌ بِأَيِّ أَرْضٍ تَمُوتُ. He doesn't even know which land he's going to die in. Which land he's going to die, he doesn't know. So imagine the time. He could die anytime. So if he doesn't know the place where he's going to die, definitely he's not going to know which time he's going to die. So it's something you have to think about. We don't know. So are we going to just take the risk and let it pass? Are we just going to live to the, they say, life is short, live it to the fullest, something.
And this comes back to what?
Once I was actually going in a car. I don't remember. I saw a coffee shop. And one of the ways they attracted their customer, they wrote below the name of the restaurant, life is short, drink this coffee, something. I was like, it's like they're saying, your life is all about coffee, What is this?
And this comes back to it. And this is the important thing. And this is a benefit everyone should take. Is you should, when you talk with context. When you understand something, understand it with context.
Yes.
Because many misunderstandings, misinformation, miscommunication. You see, my English is better than you guys. I'm so
off topic.
Okay, off topic. Anyways, a lot of these comes from what? From not knowing the proper context.
Context.
You understand? So, did we see the importance of clarifying what we mean by this topic.
Yes.
Is, and I'm rephrasing this so we understand why we are alive in this dunya. What are we doing in this dunya and what are we supposed to do in the dunya?
Yes.
And no, it's not like rocket science. Even like these shops and or these people, these philosophers, they know. Depending on what your concept of death is,
Wow.
will be how you're gonna live on the earth.
Yes.
If your I'm gonna repeat it again so it stuck in your brain.
Yes.
If your concept of death was it is the end of me and my money and my property, how will your life be? Getting
Will
as much money as you can. If death is the end of you and your pleasures and your entertainment, how is your ideology gonna be? Live to the fullest. You live once. Do the most you can. You understand? So understanding the concept of death, which is the introduction we're gonna talk about to go in to our topic today, even if we're not fully in, but yani, at least we scratch the surface, as they say. Once you understand the concept today of our podcast, then we can now move forward, and you will see how it connects this concept we have, how it connects to the future, or the next topics we're gonna mention. Now we mentioned as Muslims, this is our concept of death. We die, we live and it's the end of our test. Which means our idea of life should be to work and serve Allah Azza wa Jalla as much as you can before you what?
Die.
Before you meet Him.
Yeah.
But we live in the modern world. You understand? They divided the world into the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. You understand? And then the middle or whatever, and then the modern, and now we're in the modern era.
Industrial.
The modern era. We are in that. Industrial is the
Pre-modern.
pre-modern era is where the industrial happened and all of these things. Now we're in the modern era. It's like where the change has never been seen like it before. You understand? One of the most distinct things we see in this era is how scared people are of death. How people want to live as much as they can. They want to live. They don't want to die. What do you think are some of the things that this era has done? You understand? Either directly or indirectly to scare you off of death and make you fear death and make you love the dunya and more attracted to the dunya. What are some of the things? And go in detail in that.
I mean, firstly, obviously, we know in the modern age, the biggest change that happened is technology and media. Media is the main thing. Because, see, back in the day, media was not there. Like, there was media, but not mass media and quick media, fast media. So a person living in America, for example, wouldn't know how to communicate quickly to another place. But now the world has become such that everyone knows what's happening. So most of the time, if you look at media, they show death as something you should be afraid of and you should escape. Even in the movies, for example, they show every time a character dies or every time your favorite character dies, they make it as if, death is, you have to hate death, you have to escape, you have to do everything to survive, no matter what you can. And in some of these movies, they show you that people will do anything to live. So when people see these things, it gets stuck in their head that, I have to live, I cannot die. I have to live whatever it takes. I have to survive. I mean, yes, naturally, human beings don't want to die early, right?
And this is what we see Aisha said, radiallahu anha, right? When, isn't there any of us who doesn't hate death?
Everyone hates death.
Yes.
But now the issue comes is how are you going to deal with that situation?
Yes.
For example, if a person, he doesn't have faith and one of his loved one dies, he will take it as if it's the end of the world. He will take it as if it's the end of the world. He will go into depression and whatnot. But we Muslims, we know what's going to happen after death. One of the main things why they fear death is they don't know what's going to happen next. If you go to an atheist and if you tell them...
Yes. And it's funny because they're actually pushing a lot of this atheistic thinking.
I know.
Which obviously by necessity means there is nothing after death.
There's nothing after.
Which causes more fear, which causes more fear of death. You understand?
Now obviously it depends on religion. Some religions, they say you get reincarnated into some rat or something. Forget that. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about actual people who believe in science a lot, so much that they say there is no afterlife, all this stuff. So
do you understand how deep that is?
Yeah.
I think some people will say, do you think these people are thinking that deep?
No.
Why not?
Why not?
Because more people not wanting to die means more business.
More business.
You understand? Because I want to live more. So these companies, whatever, they're gonna be like, we're doing this is gonna give you more life or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's benefiting a lot of industries. So don't think maybe they're not thinking about, let's push this atheistic ideology, no hereafter, whatever, which means people don't know what's gonna happen after death.
Yes.
Which means people fear the what? The unknown.
The unknown.
Fear death.
Fear death.
So that's a very deep
Such a
point.
point.
Yeah, very deep point.
Even though they may show on the outside that they're strong, but deep inside they are scared of death because they don't know what's gonna happen next. And the thing is, if they don't even believe in the hisab, if they don't believe there's going to be a
What
hisab,
stops him from doing
what
anything?
stops him from doing anything? He'll be like, I don't know what's gonna happen after death, so let me just do whatever I want. But we Muslims, alhamdulillah, we know we're going to stand in front of Allah and we have to give account. So we're like, okay, we'll think I shouldn't be doing this because after death I have to go there. So this is the difference between us and the modern age. As you said, they use business tactics and whatnot. Yani Allah understand. This is my opinion.
This is indirect, I would say. Wouldn't you say like
This is indirect, yes.
Because I will tell you this. When you look at that, there is so many concepts you can look at from this social media things that is indirectly causing you to fear death, you can say.
Yes.
Because we are, as humans, we like gossiping, we like knowing what's happening, we like to be involved, you understand?
Yes.
And now more than ever you can be involved.
Subhanallah.
Now more than ever.
In literally everything.
In literally everything. You understand? Yani back in the day, you're limited to your own village. That's why they say the internet made the whole world into one village. You understand? Back then you were in your village only. You'll be involved or not involved in what's going on in your village, because now it's real life and people change when it comes to real life, unlike behind that screen. But in real life, people change, But now more than ever, you can be involved in whatever.
What exactly do you mean in being?
There is something happening in America or in China. You can just write a comment in the post. So you're involved.
By involved, you mean talk about yourself?
Talk about it, be involved in it, ask about it, interact with the people who actually are living the situation. So you're being involved in some way. You think you know what's happening. You feel like this is a shahwa. It's from the forms of shahwa, from the forms of desires, to feel like you're involved, feel like you are up to date,
Okay.
And now more than ever, you can do that.
So,
And the more you are indulging in what you love, the more you want to stay in it. So indirectly, you are going away from death and fearing death, because death will cut you off from this shahwa, from being involved and looking around and being gossiping and trending and all of these trendy things. You understand? So this is one indirect way. Other indirect ways. Can you think about other indirect ways? Because indirect, by the way, it's just one thing out of the modern world.
yes.
We mentioned social media. It's indirect. Could be direct, could be indirect. Directly, they would literally tell you, live more, do whatever you can to live. Death is scary. They can directly make you fear death and make you stay away from death. And the more you read into these things and watch into these things, you'll stay away from death. You understand? How many videos are there on YouTube about death and scared about death and all of these things? What other ways do you think is indirect or direct ways that the modern world is pushing people away from the concept of death and loving the dunya and all of these things?
I mean, obviously, before when you mentioned that it all depends on the purpose the person perceives in his life. Now, we Muslims, alhamdulillah, I told you, our purpose is worshipping Allah. But maybe there is a guy, his purpose is, as you said, money. So indirectly, if this media is putting into this person his purpose in life, they make it seem as if, okay, this is your purpose in life. So indirectly, they're telling him, you have to prepare this before death, So, yani...
That's a deep concept, and that's very deep. I actually was thinking about that, but you took it out of my head like that, mashallah. That's true. This is one aspect, especially with algorithms. You are interested about money and stuff, you search about it, they make you indulge more in it because of algorithms. One other aspect is they change your perspective of life.
Yes.
By enforcing what you know, what you know from the desires.
Absolutely. What ways do they do this? Music, they do this. You understand? Some guy could be an angel. How many white people we see or whatever who live in the suburbs, for example, in America? Alhamdulillah, here in Qatar, we don't have all of these nonsense. But in places like these countries where they're, flooded with all of these things, look at their music. You understand? You have, because of the music shaped their whole concept of life. You have a nice white guy living in a suburbs, you know what is a suburb? That's like the wealthy part of a city or whatever, And all of a sudden he wants to be a gangster.
Yeah.
You understand? Why? Because it what? Changed its concept, the music and all of it changed its concept. Made him, oh look, this life is cool, and the gangsters and these are your brothers, you understand? But Al-Ajib is, and this is from the things we're gonna talk about, is how, just to touch upon it real quick, is, and maybe we can come back to it, is how do you die for something? Some people they're willing to die for something.
SubhanAllah.
You understand?
So,
And look at gangsters, for example. Look at gangsters, for example. Are they not willing to sometimes die for their gang?
they are.
They are. You understand? What made them do that?
Obviously, the ingraining of this concept in them.
You understand? Nationality or nationalism. Aren't people willing to die for nationalism?
They are.
Aren't there wars that happens, nations between, and some they're willing to die for it? Because of what? The ingraining that happens.
Yeah.
But nowadays, the people, the love they have for the deen, it didn't reach that much.
SubhanAllah.
It didn't reach that much. And there are a couple of reasons why. Some reasons is because the media and whatever, they're pushing that love away from you
Yes.
and make you focus on other things.
Other things.
And the other reason is because of the person himself. He's not seeking ilm.
Yeah.
He's not seeking ilm. Ilm makes you want to fall more in love with the deen and all of these things. طيب. Now, we talked about some direct and indirect ways. The modern era causes a lot of people to love the dunya more and fear death. We talked about how they can shape your concept of the death, how they can change it for you meaning, and even how could they, due to algorithms and whatnot, you make it identify your concept of life and what you are interested in, and they make you indulge more in it, you understand? Indirectly. Directly, they can literally tell you about being an atheist and all of these things, and how death is scary and all of these, and live to your fullest, do as much as you can to live, you understand, directly, and many other points we mentioned about indirectly. Now, someone is fearing death and loves the dunya. What are the negatives of that, Islamically, as a Muslim? Because we said now we're talking about a person who his whole life concept of death is what?
It's
It's the end of your test.
Oh, end of test.
You understand? How will fearing death and loving the dunya affect that person?
I mean, obviously, if the person loves the dunya, then naturally he's going to focus on things other than his purpose, right? It's like obvious, natural. It's common sense. Everyone knows. If you have two things in front of you, and if you choose one, you're ignoring the other one. So if this person does not know the purpose in his life, and
We're saying someone knows his purpose.
Oh, he knows his purpose.
Someone knows I'm a Muslim. I know that the dunya, the concept of death for me is what? It's the end of my test. So what is his life focus? What should it be? Making sure I pass the test.
Yes.
So what will fearing the death and loving the dunya, what negative effects will have on that person?
Obviously, committing sins. The first thing. If he has love for the dunya,
How?
if he has love for the dunya, obviously he's going to go into many haram. Even if he's a Muslim, he's going to go into sins. Like, for example, if he loves his favorite TV show, he's going to keep wasting time, And then if he loves, for example, music,
could I interject,
yes.
just a bit? I mean, you could also get into the dunya, like many people do, without actually going into haram.
Yeah.
What would you think in
Yeah,
what would
when
be
it
in
comes to
that case?
mubah, again, we know there is mubah, haram, and everything. Now, mubah, one of the ways of shaitan is, to put you so much in mubah that you waste your time. because we know time, and as we
What
mentioned
exactly do
before,
you mean by mubah? Sorry,
it is permissible, things that are permissible.
mubah means permissible. And
Yeah, permissible, not haram. You doing it is not a sin. You know, for example, playing football, it's not a sin, it's good for your
So,
body.
so even if you're loving something, some aspect of the mubah things, okay. So if your purpose of life is to make sure you pass the test,
Yes.
you understand? But you are doing some of the things that are mubah, that doesn't defy your purpose.
Yes, it doesn't defy your purpose
unless you,
unless you.
or it doesn't defy it at all.
No, I'm coming to the point.
Okay.
Before we mentioned that we don't know when we're gonna die.
Yes.
We don't know when the test is gonna end.
Yes.
So if you keep wasting time, now you're losing out, because time is now a resource. I mean, it's
I
something you
see.
need to use. You know,
Something you could use to pass the test.
you could
which
use
is,
to pass the test, but now you're not using it.
I see.
Even if it's mubah,
Even if it's mubah.
you're not using it.
Okay.
And we know the hadith, 5 before 5. And in this, you can relate two of them. What is it? Youth before old age and life before death. So you
and
see,
time also before.
So these 2 points, if you focus on these two, it shows you when you're young, you should use it in the fullest,
I see.
because you're alive and you don't know when you're gonna die.
So that's true, because if you think about it, Hamza, look, your life revolves around winning or passing the test.
Yes.
From the resources to pass that test is time.
Time. Yes.
But if you are filling that time with mubahat, even though it's mubah, it's still mubah.
Yeah.
But you are still what?
wasting that resource.
Wasting that resource that you could use for to win that test. You understand?
So
Do you think that's a proper analogy?
You mean completely living off the mubah or something?
I mean, it's mubah.
I mean, if you mean completely leaving off what Allah has allowed for you and put pleasure in it for you, I don't think it's a very good option to do. But what
Why not?
I think,
Why not?
but what I think Abdullah meant here is obviously overindulging in the mubah, and so again, context is necessary. Yeah.
So even if you indulge in the mubah, it doesn't necessarily go against your concept of life,
Yeah,
which is
absolutely not. Yeah.
okay, because it's mubah in the end
Yeah,
of the
at
day.
the end of the day.
And actually, if you think about it, you can think about this thing in helping you pass the test in 2 ways. You understand what am I talking about? You could take the concept of doing the mubah in moderation, obviously. You can still use that to get you to pass your
Obviously,
test in 2 ways.
it is what I think you mean here is obviously intentions. If you have
This
the
is
right
one.
intention
Intention.
for example, you having the right intention to get married. Marriage is obviously a pleasurable thing to and other things that are
even
pleasurable.
sleeping, and
Eating,
sleeping, all of this.
You exercising is also something in dunyawi perspective has a benefit in it, and in your deen has a benefit in it. You eating to say because Allah has allowed you to eat, you thanking Allah while eating. Another thing, when you thank Allah for the pleasures that He has allowed you, there's also something that adds up to it. So you live in moderation, and that is you reach a balance that's perfect for you, where you get the dunya as well as the akhirah.
And that's true. That's one way
One way.
of using the mubah, even if your concept of life is to pass the test. And from the resources to pass the test is time. But in that time, you're using it to do something mubah. You can still make that thing mubah, still help you
in
pass the test.
pass the test,
One way we mentioned is your
Intention.
intention. The other way is lesser than the intention, but still proper. Sometimes you just need to breathe, man. Is that not true?
Absolutely.
It's true.
Sometimes you need to breathe.
Sometimes you need relaxation.
Sometimes you need to breathe. Sometimes you need to relax.
Yes.
And this is what the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. That upon yourself, there is a haqq upon you also.
Yes.
Yeah, in
For
the hadith
yourself.
of Salman
Yes.
al-Farisi. Yes.
You understand? For yourself is a haqq for you have a haqq upon yourself. You understand? Sometimes you need to relax.
Yes.
And this relaxation will help you on to
Doing better.
to do better.
Yes.
But if you're constantly burning yourself out, or sorry, let me rephrase. If you're constantly working, you will burn out.
You burn out.
Because doing ibadat is not burning yourself out. But you constantly doing it, you'll cause yourself to burn out.
Yes.
You understand? So that's one negative. Do you have any other negatives you can think about?
Other
You
than
said
wasting
indulging in
resources.
sins or indulging in things that defies the purpose of of
Life.
passing the test.
Passing the test.
Do you have any other think about any other negative? things.
Negative, as in you mean?
Yeah,
any
so we
negative
said
story?
so we said that for a person, now we're talking about a person,
Yeah, a
specific person
yeah.
who he realized the real concept of death
Yeah.
and what it means
Yeah.
for Muslims, the concept of death and what it should mean for Muslims,
Yeah.
which is the end of your test. This led for him for that his life purpose now is what? To pass that test. How is it negative for him, which is loving the dunya and fearing death? How will that affect him negatively? We mentioned sinning.
Yes.
We mentioned overindulging in mubahat. You understand?
Wasting time.
Wasting time, which is
Under that.
under that. What else?
What else could affect him?
Yeah, other than maybe sinning and overindulging in mubahat. Do you have any other thing?
I mean, these are the two main things.
Do you have anything that you?
I don't.
You don't.
No.
No, I think
It's an
these two are
interesting
the main
question.
things.
I think these two are the main things. But
Two
I think,
main things.
but I think if
But we can go tafsil into these two,
Yes,
which
obviously.
could be like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of
we can
points.
go
And this is
into
a challenge for these people watching. Is there any other negative things? I can't think of any other than the two. And I can assure you, if they answered, 90% of it will just be a part of the two things.
it'll be
we
a tafsil
mentioned.
of
Yeah, it would just be tafsil of what
Yeah.
we mentioned.
But I think it would be a wise choice to encourage the viewers of
To think about that.
to
yeah.
drop down in the comments on
yeah,
what they
anything.
think about the
Now we know is as it was narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that nusirtu bishabab, I was giving success
With
and
the
victory by the shabab. The shabab, we mentioned it in our episode, I think on the beginning of our episode about university, the mixed university, if I remember correctly, the beginning, we talked about the youth, its effects, and how valuable they are to the ummah. Now, coming back to the youth again and death, why is there an emphasis? First of all, two questions. Should the youth have more emphasis on remembering death? And why? Because people say, "Ya akhi, you're young, live your life." Death for all people, think about. But do you think that the youth should have more emphasis on remembering death, especially nowadays, or no?
Yes, definitely.
Why?
I mean,
I'm young, man. Why should I think about death? Really, I'm young. Let
Again.
me live my life. You guys, man, always making things depressing for us.
you want to enjoy, you want to go
Yeah, I
out
wanna
with
enjoy.
friends, you know.
I mean, as mentioned in the starting, if you want to pass a test, you don't leave off the preparations until the last. Now, this is the first point, and then until you mentioned the second point, which is we don't know when we're going to die.
Yes.
So, say you died now, then what?
And what?
Then what?
And we see examples, by the way, around us also. We see young people dying. We see young people dying at an early age. So how can you say that you are young, we need to enjoy? How do you know? Again, I'm going to bring a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he drew lines on the ground. He said one line represents hope, like the hope of a man. And then he drew another line more near, and he said this is death. And he said whenever a man's hope goes high, death reaches him. Yani meaning that death is close to you. You don't know. A man will always keep hoping and planning. He will think, oh, I'm going to
It was
live.
a circle. The Prophet drew a circle,
Aywa.
and the line from the middle passed the circle.
Yes. I think there's another hadith. And there was one more hadith which I read. It was narrated by Anas ibn Malik, if I remember correctly. And he drew lines. One line represented the hope, and the other was more near, which was death. And he said, so yani, this shows that death is very close to you. You don't know what's going to happen. I've heard of stories where people, they go out with their friends in the car, and they're thinking about 2 years, 3 years. I want to be a doctor. I want to be, and suddenly, khalas. The next day, they're in.
And this is my personal opinion, is why the youth should now have more emphasis on. First of all, look at the resources for you to die now. I think is way more than before.
Oh,
Before, I think it could either be for a young guy to die, a healthy young guy, either war or a famine,
families.
or like a epidemic or whatever they call it, which is two very unnatural things. And war, maybe at that time it was a lot. So nowadays you have way more things for kids to die now,
Yeah.
for youth to die now. Drugs.
Oh,
How widespread is it right now?
So much.
Around the world.
Around the
Doesn't matter what country. Around the world. It's very widespread.
Widespread.
Causes death.
Yes.
And who uses it most?
The young people.
Young people. You understand?
Smoking, all of
Smoking.
this.
You understand?
Very common.
So the resources right now, or the ways for, 1,000 way to die, really 1,000 way to die for young people, easy death. I'm talking, you go out of your house in a car, you're excited, don't look at me like that, okay, you die. Come on, why are you looking at me like that?
out of context.
Okay, well, come on, man. Ego. Now, and this is from the bad things we mentioned about university mix and whatnot. You're mixing it in a mixed university. You both you fall in a love triangle, and you both kill each other, or one person kills the other. Now it's easier than before. Before, even falling in love with a girl before marriage was like what? Because everyone, mashallah, is in hijab. Everyone is, but now it's like
So
open.
common.
So it's even more common for young people to fall in these things. So this is why I think for youth, it should be more emphasis right now to think about death more than anyone, because at least older people are more wise. But now the young people, they have so many resources and so many ways for them to easily just perish.
And even if you look at the statistics and the research people have done on the most common reasons or things how young people die, you will see these things you mentioned. For example, suicide.
Suicide.
Big,
Barakallah feek.
smoking.
Exactly.
And all of these things are not like before, as you mentioned, not like the war and going. They're not in war. They're not in all of this stuff. But because of how they're living their life, it's causing their death.
Causing, and so you understand what I mean. Before, for a young person, a healthy young person to die, is either war,
Or
which is the
famine.
most common, or like a famine, which is could happen, or like a epidemic or whatever. But war usually, which is one thing. Now, wars,
Oh,
either psychological wars, kill yourself, social wars with
each
your
other,
people, kill each other. Drugs, war with the drugs.
biological.
War with the car in the road. You understand?
So much.
Road rage. How many people die in road rages?
And the other thing
even
is,
by the way, in UAE, just a couple of don't think these things only in UAE, in Sharjah, I think, or somewhere close. Just 1 week ago, 3 women died, got killed, shot and killed.
Allah understand.
It's in the news, in their news, shot and killed by a dude. 3 women, a mother and 2 daughters.
How so?
Yeah, mother in her 60s and 2 daughters in their 30s. Shot and killed.
Many hit and run cases.
And many hit and run cases. Imagine.
How so? Like,
I think it's a parking dispute.
Oh,
The man went to their house. They're like, you parked in the wrong place or whatnot. They got angry. He got a gun, killed them.
again, coming back to this point, if you remember, we mentioned in the earlier how the media affects. Now in the media, they are trying to say that you are a cool person if you fight with someone on the road,
Yeah, that's your ego.
That's your,
How can someone
gangster
mess with
style,
you? Yeah,
How can someone mess with me? And the movies, they show the hero also of the movie is like, fighting.
So now the youth, more than ever, you should think about death. Don't think, because it's a split second. It could even be out of your control. You're driving. All of a sudden, shaitan comes to you. Some guy comes in front of you. You get angry. All hell breaks loose. All of a sudden, your neck is broken. You got slammed or something. You understand?
Allah protect
So Allah al-Musta'an. It's serious now. And especially as a Muslim, you have to be careful.
Yes.
طيب, one of the last points is, how can we remember death? The Prophet of the Hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ, what? أكثروا من what?
Remember the destroyer of pleasure.
أيوة. هادم اللذات.
What's that?
How do we remember death?
One of the ways, obviously, as recommended by the Prophet ﷺ, is to visit the graves. Visiting the graves is one of them. Another one, reading the Quran. When you read Quran, always there is things that will make you remember death. Like these ayat that show, kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut, and about Jannah and everything. So khalas, I'm gonna go one day and this is my end. So reading Quran and khushu in salah also. If you're having khushu in salah, sometimes you come across a verse when you're reading. Again, you get reminded of death. So these things you have to practice.
What do you think?
I don't think there is anything more to add. from what he said is obviously, visiting graves, because in the hadith as well, visiting graves was from the things not allowed.
Yeah.
But the sole reason it was allowed was because of reminding the person of death. So I think just if you put that point on the side, that itself is a very powerful point. Is
Yeah.
visiting the graves.
And this is, we got it from directly from the hadith
From
itself.
the hadith, yeah,
You know,
nothing
so
from
what,
the
what more
analogies,
is
nothing.
exactly, what more is better? And really, the ulama mentioned what more than this is there as a reminder. And you know what is sad right now? You go to a grave, you go to a janaza, you see people laugh,
And it's
people joking.
Joking around.
You understand? Ya akhi, wallahi, just 10 seconds ago we buried a guy.
I remember a time when I was small, and I used to in my mother's village, and the janaza was there, and then people around it crying, and
You know what's
saying
funny?
like this, and then I see here after I've grown up, you have buried someone, you return, you're eating food.
I wish if
together.
you returned. I wish if you where we just ya akhi, the dust is still in the air.
No, you know what's funny? What Hamza mentioned, this is actually a culture, especially in countries like India and Pakistan, all of these places where, when someone dies in the family, you have to host a like eating gathering. It's like a must. And if you don't, they're like, why? We want food, Akhi, someone died.
I mean, apart from that, yani, eating gathering, obviously when someone comes to the house where the grave is being, the janaza is, there's obviously an arrangement for food that is necessary for so many people. I mean, that's not what we are touching right now. The thing is the difference that I saw when I was little, and how the seriousness of death hit everyone present, standing around the janaza and consoling the family. What I saw now was heartbreaking. Firstly,
And I think you know why I think this happens also is I think people are making, because people made death into a joke, into a meme, into
not only just a joke. Yani, it's almost disgusting to see people. You've just buried the person, and you're returning home. You're eating food, and then you're like, we shouldn't. This is a joke I heard, and this hurt me. Like, I was like, is this the person saying this? Like, I was like, something you hear, and you're like, whoa, what did he just say? This person said, I don't think we should eat this, and he's laughing. I don't think we should eat this. That person would be jealous, the one who died. I'm like,
Really?
oh, that's
I'm like,
really
what?
That is so messed up.
I'm
that's
like,
messed up.
I
I'm
have
shocked.
also, for example, you see some people taking selfies with dead bodies and whatnot. Yani, all of these things are happening nowadays.
And you see, because I'm telling you, this is a result of people making death into a joke. You see TV shows and whatnot, they joke about death.
And the
And
thing
I,
is,
I don't think this person who said this meant it as a joke also. This person just meant it as, consoling the family through a joke.
He said it in front of the family of the dead.
No, the family of the dead had also no problem. They were like, yeah.
what?
I'm like, I'm
Ajib.
shocked because the janaza I knew, the way janaza I knew attending was like you said, Allah is with you, and may Allah give you sabr. But this way of consoling,
like-
I'm shocked.
Yeah. And seriously, like, imagine going to a janaza, the dust is still in the air of burying the guy.
No, but this
And
this
people
case
laugh.
was like in the janaza was in another country, and we were in a different.
But no, here I'm telling you, like, we go a lot and we see people laughing and joking, and it's like, Habibi, aren't we burying a dude? Aren't we right now? Like, the Prophet, what did he tell? أسأل الله عز وجل, ask Allah عز وجل لأخيكم for your brother الرحمة, or استغفروا لأخيكم فإنه يسأل فإنه الآن يسأل. Right now he's being asked.
Being asked.
Can you imagine?
It's funny, you're being. It's a situation where you should feel sadness.
I will
Immense
show you.
sadness.
Yeah, not sad. Yeah, akhi, look at wallahi, this hadith always. Imagine one time they wanted to bury a man, but when they reached, they were still digging the grave. The Prophet was sitting, and his head was on the ground, and he was like moving with the stick in the ground. You know what the Sahaba said? And we were standing, all of us, sitting with him, كأن على رؤوسنا الطير, as if in our head a bird. When would a bird land on you? If you are literally just like a stick or like a tree, you don't move.
Don't move.
Because if the bird see you moving, you think it will come to
It
you?
runs away.
It will not come to you. But they're telling you we were standing still looking at the Prophet. And imagine this scene in a grave. And the Prophet was there. And then he mentioned the journey of the person who dies and how it will be. But look at how serious it was.
The discipline and the etiquette.
I cannot express to you how I'm feeling. The Prophet ﷺ sitting there and the Sahaba. You know who's the Sahaba? Don't look at men right now. They were real men. I'm talking about real men. But the hype of the Prophet ﷺ, the hype of the situation, the seriousness of the situation, and all of these things caused the Prophet ﷺ to look like that, and the people around him to be like that. You understand? Even the Prophet ﷺ, when a janazah of a Yahudi came, he stood up for it. You understand? And now we're not going to talk about the rulings of was it abrogated or not. It's not the case. But when that happened,
what's meant here is the seriousness of the situation.
The seriousness of the situation. When he was asked, he said, "This is a nafs. It's a soul in the end." You understand? So the seriousness of the situation. Now, we talked about a lot of things, and hopefully we have enough time for this. We're gonna do it real quick, and one of you is gonna do it, not me. Give us a summarized journey of the soul from birth till death till entering Jannah.
From birth
till death till entering Jannah.
When the soul enters the body.
When the soul enters the body. I mean, obviously when
if you know, if you don't know, no problem.
If when the soul enters the body, I mean his test has started now, so
what he means obviously is to give a process description.
So for example, I will begin with
at 40 days,
at 40 days. After that, after 4 months,
he wants a timeline.
The soul is being
timeline,
given to the child, and then the rest of the 5 months happens. The baby is out. And Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions, you understand, that He created you from turab, then from nutfa, then from alaqa, then He يخرجكم طفلة, then He gets you out as a طفل. This is the story from the Quran. يخرجكم طفلة ثم لتبلغوا أشدكم. طيب, then you understand, then ثم لتكونوا شيوخا, then you become shuyukh, you become old. You understand? You imagine, look at subhanallah, look at how Allah's creation is. You were born weak and you don't know anything, and you reach a point where you're gonna be weak and you don't know anything.
Subhanallah.
وَمِنكُم مَّن يُتَوَفَّى مِن قَبْلِ. And some of you die before
you reach that.
You become طيب. When you die, what happens?
The first thing, obviously, the angel of death comes, and depending on if you are a believer or a non-believer, how they remove the soul. For the disbeliever, is going to be a bit harsh, painful, but for the believer, it's going to be smooth. And then the person is going to be questioned by the two angels about who is your Rabb, what's your deen, and who is the Prophet ﷺ, and obviously if you pass, alhamdulillah, you are given the sign of Jannah in the grave. You can see the door of Jannah, and obviously after that, this comes under the barzakh life. Now you're in the barzakh. This is between your death and resurrection. And then the resurrection happens, which is you are now coming back. Allah gives you life again, and now you're in the hisab. Based on the hisab, either if you pass the test, Jannah. If you fail, Jahannam.
May Allah protect us. May Allah give us husn al-khatimah.
Ameen.
The Prophet ﷺ mentioned people with the longest life and the good amal are the best. And the best of people are those who had long life and good amal. And the worst type of people are the opposite.
I think this is also a very important point to mention. Saying to have a long life without good amal. As in the case of the audio that we all know from Ibn He got angry when a person said not angry, but he got irritated when a person said give you long life without
بالعمل الصالح. May Allah have mercy on the Shaykh. May Allah have mercy on the dead believers and the Muslims. And سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
السلام عليكم.